I make a lot of Pokemon content. Like, a lot of it. That's possibly the understatement of the year. Matter of fact, you could argue that my coverage for Pokemon Legends Arceus is what put me on the map as a content creator. I owe a lot to the franchise, and not even just for my YouTube career, but for my childhood as well. There's so many fond memories, so many hard times that this series has gotten me through by offering a complete fictional world for me to seek refuge in when times got tough. The first video game I ever played may have been Zelda Ocarina of Time, but the first game I ever had all to myself that I could play whenever I wanted without having to answer to my family on a shared console was Pokemon Crystal version on the Game Boy Color. Pokemon was the most intimate and personal gaming experience I ever got when I was growing up. Nowadays, my relationship with the series is somewhat fractured and strained. I love the series, so I want the best for it. So you can imagine my disappointment when it let me down several times throughout the Switch era. First was with Let's Go PV's underwhelming transition for Kanto to 3D, then with Sword and Shield's immersion-breaking programming, continued with BDSP's failure to offer a valid modern-day Sinnoh experience, and finally, after getting a much-needed break and breath of fresh air with Pokemon Legends Arceus, Scarlet and Violet came to crush my hopes again with its endless glitches, sullied open world, terrible performance, and endless memory leaks. It's been a rough journey, to be sure, and some of the games I mentioned I do quite like a lot. It's just where there's good, there's also a lot of bad, and it's that inconsistent quality that's drastically changed my views on Pokemon as a whole, unfortunately. Scarlet and Violet acted as a final straw type scenario. I completely stopped playing the game before even finishing the first campaign because the performance was so bad. It gave me migraines and motion sickness whenever I tried to play. I wanted to like it, I really did. So bad. Just like with the other Pokemon Switch games, I tried to, but there came a point where I realized it's not worth forcing myself to try to enjoy something I don't enjoy when there are so many more game experiences out there I could be partaking in instead. Heck, within the same franchise, Pokemon Legends Arceus even offered that. That was my favorite Pokemon game in a long time. But that made it all the more baffling to me that such a great game, being Legends Arceus, and such a bad game, Scarlet and Violet, could be released by the same developers and within the same year no less. It's perplexing to think about. Of course, now we know more about Game Freak's practices of delegating new generational releases to newbie developers that have little to no experience making games, while remakes and Legends games and even non-Pokemon games are tasked to the more experienced developers within the company. It's a shame, really, and that inexperience from the newbie developers is only emphasized further by Pokemon's strict and fast release schedule. We've discussed these ins and outs ad nauseum here on the channel at this point, but that brings us to today, where the Switch 2 was released, and Game Freak went out of their way to give Scarlet and Violet a free update to make the game not only run properly, but run better than ever expected in 4K resolution and 60 frames per second. To top that off, the draw distance has increased for wild Pokemon, as well as the amount of Pokemon that spawn on the screen at once by over double. LODs for Pokemon are also used much further away from the camera than previously, and even important landmarks like the Artisan Windmill retain their physics and properties as far as they load in. I can't believe I'm having to congratulate a game in 2025 for this, but here we are, I guess. Now, we've known for a fact by now, even before the Switch 2 version came out, that Scarlet and Violet was a terribly coded game. We know that it was pretty much entirely unoptimized. We know that there is no reason that this game, looking as bland and barren as it does, had no reason not to run at 1080p 60 frames per second even on the Switch 1 hardware, if it had just been coded and optimized properly by a competent developing team. However, we can't change the past at this point, and while it sucks that an entire new system is required to experience it in all its glory, it is very nice of Game Freak to at least make this a free update. Almost as if an apology for the sorry state that it had originally released in. They didn't have to do this. I mean, they did, but They didn't. They already made out like bandits with all our money, and they're over 20 million sales for these games. Matter of fact, it's rather unprecedented on their end to go back to any previous installments at all and improve anything about it without charging for a completely separate version or a remake. But now, we can finally judge this title for what it was underneath all those layers of glitches and frame drops. And what it is underneath is an entirely competent, enjoyable little game with some fun gameplay and a pretty decent story, particularly towards the end of the main campaign and into the DLC. Actually, those late game moments are some of, if not the best story moments in the entire series. Even I, a big critic and multimedia connoisseur, was genuinely taken by the plot twists and execution here. The story of the Professor and the Paradox Pokemon is by far my personal favorite story beat in Pokemon history. And the Kieran subplot from the DLC areas, particularly with the Indigo Disc, were also up there. Now, I'm about to play through Mochi Mayhem, and I'm pretty excited to see where that goes too, because these two storylines were handled so well. So I have faith in this third one. Story aside, I previously made a very detailed video explaining why Scarlet and Violet's open world mechanics were antithetical to open world design. It's a really entertaining video, if I do say so myself, and I do still stand by most of all of what I say. But the frame rate fixes and even the draw distance of Pokemon does mitigate a lot of issues that I had with Scarlet and Violet's open world design choices. My biggest complaint was not being able to choose our battles. In an open world, I believe this to be extremely important. Heck, even Legends Arceus did this right, and that was a sandbox game. But in Scarlet and Violet, running into Pokemon on accident, or them running into you, and that being all that's needed to take you out of exploring and into at least 30 seconds of waiting to run around again, well, it's almost completely overhauled now, at least. I no longer run into Pokemon on accident nearly as much as before because 1, the visuals are crisper, I can see the Pokemon better. 2, the draw distance is greatly increased, so they're not spawning just right in front of you. And 3, the frame rate is stable, so I can jump or swerve to avoid them better. Oh, and actually there's a 4th reason that it's better now. Even if I do get myself into an unwanted battle, it's no longer a 30-second minimum ordeal. It's like 5 to 10 seconds now for me to press run away and resume my exploration because the game no longer slows to a crawl. It's not perfect, but it's a far cry from the entirely unenjoyable exploration experience that I had with the Switch 1 version of Scarlet and Violet. And speaking of not being perfect, it's worth noting that not every visual problem in Scarlet Violet is even ironed out or fixed with the Switch 2 update. Certain overworld objects, like windmills that aren't the Artisan windmill, don't always move, even when you're pretty close to them. There's also noticeable pop-in for textures and even entire assets in the environment when running or flying around. There's also the general jankiness of the game itself, and if all this isn't just further proof that this game is terribly programmed in general, that even this whole Switch 2 update patch can't fix it, then I don't know what else is proof that Game Freak needs better programmers. However, these are very minor issues, and now that they're the only ones I can find with the game right now in its current state for Switch 2, I'd say that's not bad at all. We can finally interact with the game itself, and as I've mentioned, it's a pretty good game. It's a great time burner for us as we wait for Legends EA to release this October, and I'm happy that this update exists at all, obviously. Scarlet and Violet offer a good bit of fun and unique experiences for Pokemon fans, so let's enjoy the small triumph while we can. We don't always get them. And let's hope that moving forward, Game Freak will never have as much of a rough patch as they did developing for Nintendo Switch 1. This update for Scarlet Violet sets a great precedent for what we can expect from Game Freak moving forward, and can only really make us more excited for what future games can look like on this hardware if they're made specifically for it, rather than them being Switch 1 ports. We can also look to games like Beast of Reincarnation for what to expect. That's Game Freak's new game that's coming to current-gen consoles. It's an action game, and it looks really good in my opinion. And I talked about this a lot in my video last week, so go ahead and give that a watch now if you want. The link is in the pinned comment below, or should be popping up in front of you in a sec. Also, if you want your name featured at the end of all of my videos and like me enough to support me, join my Patreon with the link in front of you or in the description. Or you can become a channel member right here on YouTube. I've been JotoJohnny, and I will catch you all there.